Welcome to Cloudscapes, your go-to podcast for all things cloud native. Our aim here is to keep it real and have down-to-earth chats about the cloud to also help you learn something new and be inspired on your cloud journey.
I'm Teppo Suominen, your host and the team coach here at UpCloud, and with me, as always, my co-host Jannika Jokinen, senior account. Sales lead now at UpCloud.
We can probably go with the either or.
Either or, yes. So the life progresses here at UpCloud as well. So Jannika has actually had a change of title since we've started. Congratulations on that and your new responsibilities.
Thank you.
But in addition to us two, of course, we have an esteemed guest. So I'd like to welcome with us here Niels Kersic, the founder of mosa.cloud. A warm welcome and great to have you with us.
It's very great to be here.
Yes, nice to talk to you today, also from my behalf. I'm really looking forward to this exciting topic as open source is quite, I would say, quite trendy.
In a way, yeah. It's a bit of a give and take topic always, but it's really good to have an open topic enthusiast and evangelist, even one might say, here with us.
Exactly. But before we go into that, it would be really great to hear a bit more about you, a little bit more about mosa.cloud, and what it is that you offer.
Sure. So I'm Niels from mosa.cloud. I'm a co-founder. What we do with mosa.cloud is we offer online collaboration tools. And like you said, they're open source. They're fully hosted in the EU. And this is something we feel very strongly about. So I'm excited to talk about open source and why we think this is the future of collaboration.
Yeah, sounds good. And could you tell a bit more about the journey? How did you end up here? And how did you end up actually, establishing mosa.cloud?
Yeah, the interesting thing is actually that we came from a Google Workspace background. So we come from a company called Zaps, and we've been a Google Workspace reseller and partner for many years now, from even before it was called Google Workspace. So we kind of know what we're talking about. But with how the world is right now, we've already been talking about what's next, what's the future going to look like. And with recent events, that conversation started up again. So we started looking at what alternatives could we offer to our customers, because we've been getting the questions about that, and we didn't really have a good answer to that. So we started looking around, like which tools are available, and we landed on some really interesting tools that we believe are very nice to work with, and we just want to make it easier for other people to work with them as well.
Yeah, that sounds quite inspiring. Like you first see a challenge and then you're like, actually, I'm going to make something out of this and offer a solution as a result.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. Then if you think about your customers, what kind of customers do you typically work with?
So our focus is mostly small to medium businesses, at least as Zaps. And I think for mosa.cloud, it's going to be our focus in the beginning as well. We're starting off, so small companies are a little bit easier to onboard and migrate than a large enterprise. Yeah. But in the future, I'm not saying that we would never go to larger companies as well.
Yeah, I mean, the tool set kind of lends itself to anybody, but maybe it's easier to get smaller companies to be ready for the change. Let's put it that way. Do you actually, on that topic, do you see the transition to an open source based tool set? Like, what are the pain points that your customers usually bring forward? Is it like fear of it won't work, or it won't work at us, or what sort of troubles do you see there?
It's a very good question. It really depends on the company who you're talking with. Some companies have their own IT, so they're a bit more aware of what goes into running software, and some of them are very small companies and they don't know IT anyway. Which is sometimes why they're in Google Workspace, because it's one click and it just works. Yeah, they are nice tools. So the conversations are very different. But I think in a lot of conversations, people worry about, is this future proof? Can I do everything that I can do with the tools I'm using right now? But you have to start the dialogue and see what do you actually need out of your software, because in most cases I think people have software that offers 90% more than what they actually use. So yeah.
Yeah, that is actually, I think, a good point. When technology evolves quite a lot, of course, all the time, and then sometimes where is the threshold that, hey, actually I just need these bits and I don't need all the bells and whistles, and what's the best solution for my setup and the needs that I have.
And especially once you're buying from the mega vendors, in a sense, like you have everything there for sure. Like anything you could ever need is there, but most of the times you don't really like. For most companies, they use like sheets and forms and docs, and that's it. and then you've got all of the back office there that you never even touch. Yeah. It's like, all right, well, what actually fits your need?
Yeah,
I feel very strongly about this because I feel there's opposing interests with the per user, per license pricing model. Yeah. Because, with being compliance and GDPR, you have to have the traceability of everything that happens in your system. So everyone needs their own account. But you have people that log into their email once a week or just check their calendar twice a week. But they need this full license with everything that's included. Yeah. That's super expensive for a company just to be compliant. But exactly, you're not even using everything you're paying for.
Exactly. We touched base a little bit on what's technically the thing that sets you apart from the other collaborator platforms. But could you maybe tell a little bit more about what's your thing in the market?
Sure. So when we started looking at what's available, we tested some tools. Like I said, coming from a Google background, the tools are pretty nice to work with, and everything is, the buttons are where you expect them to be, and it usually works the way you expect it to work. And we didn't find that to be true for many of the tools that we tested. But then we came across a project called La Suite Numérique, which is run by the French government. And their first app that blew up on Hacker News called Docs, which we really fell in love with. And the German government is involved in this project as well, and the Dutch government is collaborating as well. So there's definitely a lot of momentum behind it. And when we started using it and chatting with them, it really resonated with us. It's a bit different from what you're used to with, say, Word or Google Docs, because it's all Markdown based. So it's less focused on print, but more focused on what we think collaboration will look like today and in the future. Because it'll be much easier to integrate other tools and AI and tools like that. So it's a switch, but we call it a content over form. And you have to get people into that. But once they see it usually clicks pretty quickly.
Well, I personally have been using Obsidian ever since it was available for work use as well, because I used it personally, and then finally I can use it at work. And so for me, the using Markdown resonates immediately, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And using Obsidian, I'm an Obsidian user as well. You know that you can build extensions on top of Markdown. Yes. So in our Docs platform, you type / and you see all the commands that are available. But we can integrate with any other platform. So we're also having a lot of discussions like, what do you want to see us integrate with? But it's all at your fingertips, just one click away.
Exactly. And that's one of, I would say, the big beauties of utilizing open source is the fact that once you have the integration ability, then the world is open. You've got an almost endless source of solutions that you can pick from that will fit your use case. Of course, it needs a bit of finding. Not everything is perfect. Not everything will fit your use case. But once you've got that set out done, then it's really easy to expand from there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's there's so much opportunity, and if something doesn't work the way you want it to work, you just look in the code and you change it. Exactly. It's easy as that.
Yeah.
So to me, it sounds that technically you're in the market for companies who are looking maybe a bit more flexibility and a bit more, custom ways to buy collaboration platforms. Such a hard word. But, I think it's nice to see that there is also, options available. That if you feel that the solution that is currently out there is not for me, you can then, find alternatives, and then you can actually be more flexible with the customer to then make it work for their use cases due to, for example, the open source mentality.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're really looking for people that want to customize a lot, at least not at this moment, because the base version also really works very well. So for small companies, I think it does exactly what people will need out of their software. But the beautiful thing, I feel at least, is in our platform, we tie all the individual apps together with one identity provider. So this is the work that we do to make it easier for you to run whichever software that you want. But if there's other software that you want to use, or maybe you feel like the calendar app that we have is not as nice as this other one you have, we can just switch it out. It's Kubernetes. So you just run a different container in it and put it behind the OIDC, and everything just works. And I think that's future proof.
Yeah. And that's where the magic happens. But I heard Kubernetes mentioned. Of course, we at UpCloud, we work really closely with you on the hosting part. Could you tell a bit more about how did we actually end up working together, and how did you actually find UpCloud in the beginning?
Yeah, so being in the Google ecosystem, we've been working with Google Cloud for many years now. So of course we're using Kubernetes.
Yeah.
The tools that we're developing now, they also run on Kubernetes, and we just know it quite well. So I started looking at what Kubernetes opportunities do we have available in Europe, because that's super important to us. It has to be hosted in Europe. So we just started comparing some cloud providers, and one of them was UpCloud. And from the beginning, it was a very good fit. Your coworker Jasper sent me an email, and we planned a 15-minute introduction, and we ended up talking for an hour about Kubernetes and open source and independence and sovereignty and everything that's important to us. And immediately it clicked. But also, the platform has to work. And to be honest, it works really well. You have the Terraform providers, you have the live chat. So it's really helped us to have our momentum in building our platform.
That's really good to hear. It's always nice to get the feedback that we're able to provide the platform that works. But you actually mentioned something there that we've circled around the whole conversation that I want to drill in a bit. Sovereignty and being EU-based. It's definitely at the heart of what you guys are doing and what's your focus. But how did you end up in that space, and what does it actually mean for you at mosa.cloud going forward that you want to focus on that segment and that need in the market as well?
So for me, sovereignty and vendor lock-in are very much connected topics, because I think the sovereignty discussion wouldn't even be this big if we weren't so locked into these vendors from other countries. But I feel that a lot of people, with all the regulation that's around today, and just being in control of your customers' data, your own data, you have to be the one that's in control and have ownership of everything that's in your company at the end of the day. And with the tools that people are using nowadays, I feel that's not respected as much. And sovereignty is a very loaded term nowadays, because everyone is calling everything sovereign now. But then you start digging down, and it's still Amazon or Microsoft or Google underneath somewhere. So when we talk about sovereignty, please do your research and find out if it's actually sovereign.
It's not the Scooby-Doo moment where you pull the mask off. Oh, it's Google Cloud again.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I've seen it a few times in the last few weeks. So
yeah, and I think that's also a one way to build trust with your end customers, because when they are actually using a collaboration platform and there is multiple different aspects into it, and they're like, actually, how is the provider that we are buying these services from? And then it's like, actually, your data and everything is safe with us because we are European and we are European underneath as well. So that's definitely a good selling point also for you towards your customers.
Yeah, we aim to be the right place for people to run their software and store their data. But the beauty of being open source and the way that we run it is that you're completely in control of moving out. If at some point you're like, mosa.cloud is not doing me a service, you can just take all your data out. It's all open source. You can run the tools yourself, ask another host to run the tools. It's S3, it's OIDC, it's Docker containers. You can run that anywhere. So of course I would love for people to be happy with our service, but they can leave at any time. And I feel like that's just trust that we want to build with people.
Exactly. Now you need to have the product good enough that people want to use it and are not forced to use it, because that way you keep the customers instead of kind of hard arming them into like, you got to stay with us. There, you don't have an option.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it as well, that, you're so confident in the service that you provide that it's like, hey, we love to work with you, but in case something happens or something changes,
here are the keys.
Exactly.
Oh, that's really, really brilliant. I agree.
And well, we a little bit already talked about this, why open source is at the central of your strategy. But could you maybe elaborate a bit why it is so critical for your vision going forward as well?
Open source is at the core of all software. I saw some stats recently that I think 96% of all software products have some form of open source code in there. Yet all these big companies are just having closed source software, and you just have to trust their word for it. I think open source has so many advantages. You can just look at the code, have it audited. Like I said, if there's anything that doesn't work the way that we want it to work, you can change it. But also having a healthy open source ecosystem is something we really believe in, because we have amazing open source developers, but funding is often an issue. So creating an ecosystem around open source that is healthy and everyone can make a living out of it, I think that's really going to improve technological independence.
No, that would be really amazing. There's the old joke that all software that is run is actually kept alive by one guy named Hans that lives somewhere in the mountains. Nobody knows who he is, but he gives code every 3 years. So,
yep. The slide I just mentioned with the 96%, right next to this was the XKCD meme about that.
Yes.
So I know the one.
Yes, I'm aware of the strip. Yes.
But I think the European Commission also did a research at some point, and they found that for every 10% increase in open source spending, it would generate like 0.4 to 0.6% more in GDP, which to me is crazy. Like, we're not spending that much money on open source. So just a 10% increase is not a lot, but a 0.4 to 0.6% GDP increase is huge if you look at a market as big as the European Union. We need to do that.
Yeah, that would just benefit everybody.
Yeah, and I think, of course, we've been talking quite a lot about the benefits, and to me, they sound pretty awesome. But what about the trade-offs? Do you see any like harm, so to say, by using open source?
Yeah, there's many parties involved in these projects. So one issue is, how do you get everyone on the same page about what to build, what to prioritize? How do you build it? That's an issue. Also, for some companies, they don't trust open source as much. Of course, we have some good arguments against that. But you really have to start a dialogue with people to explain why we think this is a more healthy, more future-proof way of using software.
All right. I had a follow-up question on this, but I forgot it because this was a good answer, actually. It covered most of my bases. I'll get back to that if I remember it. Sorry, Annika, continue.
No
One
worries.
thing I could add is the concept of public money, public code. It's something that really resonates with us, because governments are spending so much money on software, but it's going to Microsoft or Amazon with their closed source software. But if the government spent half as much money into code that everyone in the economy can use, all the other businesses that are doing similar activities, they can benefit from that as well.
This reminded me of a question. It's not an easy one, I apologize in advance, but has to do with public procurements and what your vision mission are. Because at least in Finland, a lot of times when something is publicly procured, there's a very heavy RFP process. You have to jump through all of these hoops, and it usually means that most of the public projects end up with the big boys. Like the largest players in the market get the cases because it's such a hard effort to pass the line to even be able to participate. Is this something that you think or you see that you could help tackle or kind of solve with the open source question? I think it would be, like you said, like public money, public code would be an amazing thing to see in the future.
I don't think I can give you a concrete answer, but I can definitely say we're trying.
That's good to hear in itself already.
Yeah. So like I said, the projects that we're using come from La Suite Numérique, which is run by the French government. And then Germany and the Netherlands are collaborating on that as well. And they all have very different ways of approaching it. But it's really starting the dialogue of, okay, how do we see open source fitting into government use in these countries? But it's also interesting to see that you have some people in the government that are like, yes, we should do this. And then other people are like, but we just spent this much money on going to Azure or going to AWS. And, you know, these are conversations that I'm not really part of. And I'm not sure if I want to be part of them.
Yeah.
And of course, as always, it's when it comes to political discourse, the progress is slower. It takes a lot more time, a lot more effort to move these things forward. So especially once you're starting out, you usually want to move a bit faster than creating the political environment where you can change everything at once.
And then if we think about, you know, of course, open source is secure and you know, you don't need to worry about the vendor lock-in and so forth. But sometimes in the discussions, you see people thinking that is open source really actually way to go? And is it actually secure? Can I trust it? So what's your perception on that topic?
I think anyone that's worked with closed source enterprise software can tell you that it's not pretty, or at least not always. I think in general, the quality of open source code is usually better than the closed source stuff. So for me, I trust it more, but also if any of our customers doesn't trust it enough, or even before they become customer, they can ask any auditing firm or any software developer that they know to just look at the code. I will challenge you to ask Microsoft to see all the code behind Azure and Word before you purchase your Office license, but I don't think they'll show you.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good point about open source. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like I mentioned at the start, there's the give and take, because at the same time, anyone can audit it, anyone can participate, and you get these sometimes you get these horrible news, like a kernel module that has been hijacked, like we got last year. But at the same time, everyone has the visibility. Like you said, like if you want to audit it, just get someone who understands the code and have a look at it. And sometimes, yes, it's very complex. It goes all the way down to the Linux kernel. So like it's not an easy job to do the audit trail from end to end, but it is possible. You can look at it. You can be sure of how it operates. And that's part of the beauty of it.
Yeah, there's going to be bugs and vulnerabilities in code.
That's in all code. You can't make code without making bugs at some point.
Exactly. But at least with open source code, when something happens, it's out in the open, and there's hopefully a large community that's going to work as quickly as possible to actually fix it. Whereas with closed source software, companies actually have an incentive to not be transparent about it, to not disclose that they had a vulnerability that maybe was open for more than a year before someone found it and they fixed it. I think open source in that way is actually better than closed source software.
That's a really good point. Yeah, if you look at the run-through rates of zero-day vulnerabilities in open source versus closed source, you can see that they are fixed faster in open source. It's just like a fact of life.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then if we think about, mosa.cloud and the future, what is next?
So at the moment, we're very hard at work building our platform. We're doing some pilots, some close pilots at the moment, and we would love to do more. So if anyone wants to contact us, please do. But hopefully later this summer, we can launch a public beta for our first apps and the platform in general. But at the same time, we're already working at the step that's after that as well. So we're building a new email application that we think solves some issues that people face quite often with email nowadays. And we're looking at how we can, utilize AI as much as possible to actually enrich people's user experience and make their work, their daily work easier. So lots of work to do, but it's very exciting and it's progressing very quickly.
All right. So expecting great things even in this year, hopefully, in open beta.
Yeah.
Or even further.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also touched this topic a bit, but maybe just to get your final thoughts on, the opportunity that is out there for open source platforms to collaborate in the European market. How do you see that from your perspective?
I'm very excited about this. We were at a hackathon in Paris a few weeks ago, and there were quite a few open source companies there. And everyone is just seeing how can we strengthen each other. So another project that was there is a German project. They're called Open Project. There's a project management software. And they built a prototype. And like I mentioned before, in Docs, you have the slash, and then you see all the commands that you can do. And they integrated Docs within their project management. So you just write a document with what's my project, who's responsible, what's the timeline, and then one click, and it's fully configured in your Jira alternative. But at the same time, we are building an integration between our meeting application and Docs, where we take the summary and the action points from a meeting and put it in a document. But if you then combine those two, innovations, then you can have a meeting and we can discuss a new project and say this is the timeline for it. And by the time that we finish drinking our coffee afterwards, the whole project board is configured and set up. And it's independent tools. It's all open source. But at the end of the day, it's I think it's very competitive with the alternatives that are on the market right now. And this is just one example. And I know there's a million more.
Brilliant. Maybe one more question then on individual company level. If there is a company now looking at their tech stack, they've listened through the episode, they're hearing someone's thinking we pay a lot for Microsoft or we pay a lot for Google. Maybe we should think about alternatives, or maybe they're just not happy with the stack they've got. How should a company move forward with this? What's the first step, or where should one look? Apart from asking from you guys, of course, but if you want to kind of do a bit of research, where do you start?
What's your advice of researching into the topic and deciding where to go and how?
You have to figure out first what's really important to you, because people often start looking for a one-to-one replacement and then find that it's hard to find that. But if you approach it from a different angle and really look what do we need day to day to actually do our work, it often leads to a different result. So do that analysis first, what do we really need? And then you start researching which tools are available, what are other people doing to solve these problems. And I bet there's some open source tool to solve it, but then evaluate how active is it? Is it actively maintained? Who's behind it? That's, of course, also very important. So, first evaluate what do you really need out of your software.
I think this is an amazing advice for any project, even regardless if it's a tech stack or something else. But definitely a good place to start always. Thank you. Have we reached the end of our...
We have reached the end of the formal questions, and now we have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, so we've got a few quick questions. Just answer with a few words, a sentence or two. The first thing that pops to your head, no need to overthink it. But first off, what is the cloud trend that you see currently emerging in Europe that interests you the most? Especially in the cloud end of things.
I would say sovereignty.
All right.
Which is everything we're talking about here.
Exactly.
But so many people are reevaluating where they are with their software now, and maybe be a bit scared about it. But I think over the next year, we'll see more resources and more discussion about that. And I think it would be a big thing.
It's definitely an interesting time to be looking into the European cloud market at the moment, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah. And then when you're not navigating the cloud, what would you say is your favorite place on Earth?
My favorite place on Earth, I would say anywhere out in nature, away from population, away from noise and sound pollution, just to really decompress and be in touch with, where we come from again. That really calms me down.
Great. All right. Then a bit of a recommendation maybe to listeners. What's the one book, movie, or experience that has had a great impact on you?
Good question. I think I would say the book Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be quite a procrastinator in my youth, and even though the book doesn't give you groundbreaking advice, like you have to switch everything around, it's actually the complete opposite. But to me, that really clicked and made it easier for me to actually get done what I want to get done and live a better life.
It is definitely a good read. I would also recommend it.
Yeah. And then what's one thing you wish people would take away from this conversation we've had today?
I would say evaluate where companies are trying to lock you into their ecosystem. You hear vendor lock-in all the time, but often you're locked into something before you even realize. So, before you sign that new contract, realize how are people trying to lock me into something, and how can I ever get out of this? What's my exit strategy? What's the alternative? Just to be really aware of, what are you getting into, and how hard would it ever be to get out of it? And I think on a previous episode, Hosted Power mentioned the same thing.
Yeah,
I think that's really important for any company to be aware of.
And I think that's from what we've discussed today, one of the key aspects is really the understanding and evaluation of where you're going and why. Other things that we've covered today, I'll try to distill a bit. We went through quite a ride, but we discussed, of course, sovereignty and how it works for companies and what you should be aware of if you wish to look for sovereign solutions, and especially what it means in Europe and how mosa.cloud is trying and of course, hopefully succeeding in changing the landscape there. And then maybe the main thing we spent time on was open source and how that defines the landscape in a sense for sovereignty, especially in our and your use cases and in the European market. And of course, then, we're definitely looking forward to seeing the collaboration tools that you guys come up with and are able to show the world a better way, maybe in the future, on how to create and build these tool environments and systems that companies will need going forward in the future.
We're very excited to show everyone.
Brilliant. I can't wait.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Niels, so much for your time with us and joining us today. It's been an illustrious conversation. Shed quite a bit of light into where we are at the moment with the European setup, at least from my point. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.